I'm Joshua, 37, and the night my daughter called me screaming from a police station cell was the night I stopped being just a guy trying to move on and started being a man on a warpath. Before I tell you how I brought a millionaire to his knees and cleared my daughter's name, let me know where you folks are watching from in the comments below. I always like to see how far these stories travel. It was 11:43 p.m. on a Tuesday. I was sitting in my home office, staring at a stack of surveillance photos for a corporate fraud case I was working on. The house was quiet, that kind of heavy silence that settles in when you live alone. I'm a private investigator now, but I spent years on the force before that. I know the rhythm of the night, and I know that when the phone rings this close to midnight, it's never good news. When I saw Bella flash on the screen, my stomach dropped. My 16-year-old daughter was supposed to be asleep at her mother's house across town, in that gated community where the lawns are manicured with scissors and the neighbors don't talk to each other. I answered on the first ring. Bella? Dad? Her voice was a jagged tear in the silence. She was hyperventilating. Dad, I'm at the police station, the North Precinct. I was already out of my chair, grabbing my keys and my jacket. Slow down, honey. Why are you at the precinct? Was there an accident? He hit me. Dad, she sobbed, the sound muffled like she was trying to hide the phone. Richard hit me. He slapped me across the face and shoved me into the wall. But, Dad, please, you have to come. My blood turned into ice water. Richard Sterling, my ex-wife's new husband, the real estate mogul, the man who drove a Rolls-Royce and treated people like disposable tissues. I'm coming, Bella. I'm leaving right now. Did you tell the officers? Are you pressing charges? That's the thing, she cried, her voice cracking into a high-pitched panic. He's claiming I attacked him. He told them I went crazy and clawed his face. And Dad, they believe him. They put me in a cell. They're talking about booking me for assault. I stopped dead in my tracks by the front door. They what? Please hurry. Mom is here, but she's not saying anything. She's just standing there with him. Do not say another word to anyone, I commanded, my voice dropping into that cold, professional tone I used to use on suspects. But this time it was to protect the only thing in the world that mattered to me. Don't sign anything. Don't answer questions. I'll be there in 20 minutes. I hung up and sprinted to my car. It wasn't a patrol car anymore. It was a black Porsche Cayenne Turbo. I'd done well for myself since leaving the force, specializing in high-stakes financial investigations and security consulting. I bought the car not to show off, but because I needed something fast, heavy, and reliable. Tonight, I needed it to fly. I tore out of my driveway, the engine roaring like a waking beast. The GPS said 28 minutes. I made it in 14. My hands were gripping the leather steering wheel so hard my knuckles were white. The road was a blur of streetlights and shadows. My mind was racing, replaying every interaction I'd had with Richard Sterling. The guy was a classic narcissist. He had the money, the connections, and that slippery charm that worked on everyone, especially my ex-wife, Elena. I knew he was controlling. I knew he was arrogant. But physical abuse? And then framing a 16-year-old girl for it? That was a level of evil I hadn't anticipated. I merged onto the highway, cutting across 3 lanes of traffic. I wasn't just a father tonight. I was a detective building a case in my head at 90 miles an hour. If they were booking her, they had probable cause. That meant Richard had injuries and he had a story that fit. He was smart. He wouldn't do this sloppy. He'd have a narrative ready. I thought about custody. I had joint custody. But Bella lived primarily with Elena because of the school district and the lifestyle Elena insisted she needed. I paid a hefty chunk of my salary every month in child support, plus putting money into a college fund that I legally controlled. I had always played by the rules. I kept the peace for Bella's sake. Tonight, the peace was over. I skidded into the precinct parking lot, taking up 2 spaces. I didn't bother locking the car. I stormed up the concrete steps, the cool night air biting at my face, but I felt like I was burning up from the inside. I burst through the double doors of the North Precinct. The smell hit me first: stale coffee, floor wax, and misery. It was a smell I knew better than my own cologne. The desk sergeant was a guy named Miller. Middle-aged, thinning hair, looked like he was counting the minutes to retirement. He didn't look up from his paperwork at first. "Take a number, have a seat," Miller mumbled. "I'm not taking a number," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "You have my daughter." Miller looked up, annoyed, ready to tell off an unruly parent. "Sir, you can't just come in here and—" His eyes locked onto mine. He paused. He squinted. Then his face drained of color. "Vance?" he stammered. "Detective Vance?" "It's Joshua now, Miller," I said, leaning over the high desk. "But yeah, it's me. We had worked together years ago, back when I was making a name for myself in major crimes." Miller knew my record. He knew I didn't mess around. I didn't know," Miller stuttered, standing up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "The girl, Bella Vance. I didn't make the connection with the last name. I thought, where is she?" I cut him off. "She's in holding cell too. But listen, Josh." Miller lowered his voice, leaning in conspiratorially. "It's a mess. The stepdad, Mr. Sterling? He's in the VIP interview room. The guy's bleeding. Scratches all over his face. He's got a witness, too. The son." "Kyle?" I asked, my jaw tightening. "Yeah, the teenage boy. He gave a statement. Said your girl just snapped. Started screaming about how she hated them and went for the dad's eyes. We had to follow protocol, Josh. Domestic violence laws. You know how it is. If there's visible injury and a witness." "I know the law, Miller," I snapped. "I also know my daughter. She's 5'3" and weighs 100 pounds soaking wet. Richard is 6'2" and works out daily. You telling me she beat him up?" Miller looked uncomfortable. He rubbed the back of his neck. "The stepdad is saying he didn't fight back because he didn't want to hurt a child. He's playing the saint, Josh. And the lieutenant is eating it up. Sterling has been dropping names since he walked in. The mayor, the chief. Of course he is," I muttered. "Get me to her. Now." Miller buzzed the door open. "I'm sorry, man. I had no idea. If I'd known she was your kid, I would have called you the second they brought her in. Just open the door." As I walked down that familiar hallway, passing the drunk tank and the processing rooms, I felt a cold rage settling in my chest. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was a setup. Richard Sterling wasn't just trying to punish Bella. He was trying to ruin her. A domestic assault charge on her record would kill her college applications, her future. He was trying to break her. But he made one mistake. He forgot who her father was. The holding area was cold. It always was. They keep the temperature down to keep the drunks docile and the bacteria from multiplying. But for a scared 16-year-old girl, it must have felt like a meat locker. Miller unlocked the heavy metal door to interview room 2. I stepped inside, and my heart shattered. Bella was sitting at the metal table, her knees pulled up to her chest, hugging herself. She was wearing her pajamas, flannel pants and a t-shirt, and her feet were bare. They hadn't even let her put on shoes. When she saw me, she let out a sound that I will never forget. A mix of relief and pure agony. "Dad!" I was at her side in a second. She buried her face in my jacket, sobbing so hard her whole body shook. I wrapped my arms around her, shielding her from the room, from the cops, from the world. "I've got you," I whispered into her hair. "I'm here. You're safe." I pulled back gently to look at her. That's when the rage spiked again, hot and blinding. Her left cheek was swollen, a dark purple bruise already blooming across the delicate skin. Her lip was split in the corner, dried blood caking the edge. And on her upper arms, I saw the distinct, finger-shaped bruises of a man's grip. He had grabbed her, hard. "He did this?" I asked, tracing the air near her cheek but terrified to touch it. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "He came into my room. He was yelling about my grades, Dad. I got a B in chemistry. Just a B. And he started screaming that I was ungrateful, that he pays for everything. I tried to walk past him to get to Mom, and he grabbed me. And then, I pushed him, she choked out. I just wanted him to let go. I pushed his chest. And then he slapped me, so hard I fell. Then he chased me into the hallway. And Kyle? I asked. Where was Kyle? Kyle was laughing, she whispered, looking down. He was standing by his bedroom door, filming it on his phone, I think, or just watching. When Richard started scratching his own face, Kyle just laughed. I froze. Wait, repeat that. Richard scratched his own face. Yes. Bella looked up, her eyes desperate. He chased me to the stairs, then stopped. He looked right at me, Dad. He smiled. And then he took his own fingernails and raked them down his cheeks. He yelled, "Help! She's attacking me!" loud enough for the neighbors to hear. Then he told Kyle to call 911. It was diabolical. It was theatrical. And it was exactly something Richard Sterling would do. He knew the system. He knew that in a he said, she said domestic dispute, the person with the bleeding wounds usually gets labeled the victim initially, especially if there's a witness. And Mom? I asked, dreading the answer. She was in the master bedroom. She ran out when she heard him yelling. Richard told her I attacked him. He pointed at his face. And Mom? She just looked at me and asked why I couldn't control my temper. I closed my eyes for a second. Elena, my ex-wife. We divorced 5 years ago because she wanted a life I couldn't give her on a cop's salary. She wanted the country club, the luxury vacations, the status. She found it in Richard. And to keep it, she had sold her soul. Okay, I said, standing up. I believe you, Bella. I believe every word. The police don't, she sniffled. They said Kyle gave a statement. Dad, Kyle lied. He told them I came at Richard with a nail file. I didn't even have a nail file. Sit tight, I said, smoothing her hair. I'm going to go talk to them. Do not say a word to anyone else. I walked out of the room, my face a mask of calm. Inside, I was calculating. I needed to see the enemy. I walked toward the front desk area where Miller had pointed. The VIP treatment. Sitting on a bench near the captain's office was Kyle Sterling. Kyle was 17, the golden child. He was Richard's son from a previous marriage. He had his father's dark hair and his father's sneer. He was wearing a prep school hoodie and expensive sneakers, tapping away on his iPhone like he was bored waiting for a table at a restaurant. He looked up as I approached. He didn't look scared. He looked amused. Hey, Josh, Kyle said, not bothering to stand up. Rough night, huh? Cut the crap, Kyle, I said, standing over him. I know what happened. Kyle smirked. It was a practiced expression, one he'd learned from watching his father demean waiters and valets. Bella went psycho. Sad, really. Dad's really hurt. He might need plastic surgery. We're definitely suing. We're pressing charges. Whatever gets her locked up. You gave a statement to the police? I asked, keeping my voice even. Yep. Told them everything. How she came at him screaming. How she scratched him. Dad was just trying to defend himself. He's a hero, honestly. Trying to restrain a violent teenager. You're lying, I said simply. And filing a false police report is a felony, Kyle. Even for a minor, it carries weight. It stays on your record. Good luck getting into Harvard with a perjury charge. Kyle laughed. Who's gonna prove it? You? It's 2 against 1. Actually, 3 against 1. Elena saw the aftermath. She's backing Dad up. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. Nobody believes Bella, Josh. She's the crazy stepdaughter. Dad is the pillar of the community. You're just the ex-husband who couldn't afford to keep his wife. Know your place. I wanted to grab him. I wanted to shake the entitlement right out of his designer hoodie. But that's what they wanted. They wanted me to lose control. They wanted the angry ex-cop to cause a scene so they could discredit me too. My place, I said, leaning down so my face was inches from his, is the guy who finds the truth. Remember that. I turned and walked away before I did something that would land me in the cell next to Bella. I needed to see Richard. And I needed to see Elena. I found them in the captain's office. The door was open. Lieutenant Graves was sitting behind his desk, looking sympathetic. Richard Sterling was sitting in a guest chair, holding an ice pack to his cheek. Elena was standing by the window, staring out at the parking lot, her arms crossed. Richard looked up as I entered. He was wearing a custom suit, no tie, looking like he just stepped out of a boardroom meeting, except for the angry red scratches running down his left cheek. They were deep. He had really dug in. "Joshua," Richard said, his voice dripping with fake concern. "I'm so sorry we have to meet like this. I tried to tell the officers not to call you yet. I didn't want to worry you. You had my daughter arrested," I said, stepping into the room. "You didn't want to worry me? She's out of control," Richard sighed, shaking his head. "We've tried everything. Therapy, boundaries. But tonight, she just snapped. Look at my face, Josh. She's violent." I looked at Elena. "And you? You believe this?" Elena turned slowly. She looked tired. Her makeup was perfect. Her clothes were expensive. But her eyes were empty. "Josh, please. Don't make a scene. Richard is bleeding. Bella has been difficult lately." "She has a black eye, Elena," I shouted, causing the lieutenant to stand up. "She has bruises on her arms shaped like his hands. You're her mother. How can you stand there and let him frame her?" "Frame her?" Richard laughed, a short, sharp sound. "Don't be ridiculous. Why would I hurt myself? I'm a businessman, Josh. My face is my brand. This is embarrassing. I just want Bella to get help. We can drop the charges," Richard continued, smoothing his jacket. "If you agree to send her to this facility I found. It's in Utah, for troubled teens. She needs strict discipline. Sign the papers, let her go there for a year, and I'll tell the DA it was a misunderstanding." I felt a chill run down my spine. A facility in Utah. Those places were notorious. They were holding cells for rich kids, places where they broke your spirit. He wanted to ship her away. He wanted to erase her from his perfect life. "That's never going to happen," I said. "Then she goes to juvie," Richard said, his voice hardening. "Assault causing bodily harm. With a weapon, her fingernails count. She'll have a record. Her life is over before it starts. Be reasonable, Josh. You can't afford a lawyer who can beat me. You can't afford the civil suit I'll file for damages. Just let me handle it. I'm trying to be generous here." He thought he had won. He thought it was checkmate. He had the money, the witness, the wife, and the wounds. But he didn't know about the necklace. The air in the lieutenant's office was thick enough to choke on. Richard sat there, the king of his own little world, dabbing at his scratched face with a pristine white handkerchief. He looked at me with pity, which was worse than hate. To him, I was just a nuisance, a fly buzzing around his Rolls-Royce life. Lieutenant Graves cleared his throat. "Mr. Vance, look, Mr. Sterling is being very accommodating here. Given the injuries and the witness statement from the son, we have enough to book Bella for second-degree assault. In this state, that's a mandatory arrest. If Mr. Sterling is willing to seek alternative resolutions, you should listen." "Alternative resolutions?" I repeated, staring at Elena. "You mean sending our daughter to a boot camp in the desert?" Elena wouldn't meet my eyes. She fiddled with the diamond bracelet on her wrist, a bracelet that probably cost more than my daughter's entire college fund. "It's a therapeutic boarding school, Josh." Richard showed me the brochure. "They have horses. They have structure. Bella needs structure. She's been so moody, so defiant. She's 16, Elena." I stepped closer to her, ignoring Richard. "She's not defiant. She's a teenager living in a house where she's treated like an intruder. Did you even ask her what happened? Did you look at her face? Or did you just listen to him?" "I heard the screaming," Elena whispered, her voice trembling. "I saw Richard bleeding. Bella was hysterical. What was I supposed to think?" "You were supposed to think like a mother." "Enough," Richard barked. The fake sympathy evaporated, replaced by the cold steel of a man who destroys companies for sport. "Stop harassing my wife. This is exactly why Bella is the way she is. She learned this aggression from you. He stood up, towering over the desk. He was a big guy, broad-shouldered, used to physically intimidating people in boardrooms. Here's the deal, Joshua. I'm tired of this. I've been patient. I've let Bella live in my house, eat my food, enjoy the lifestyle I provide. And she repays me with disrespect and violence. I'm done. Tonight was the last straw. He pulled a folded document from his inside jacket pocket. Of course, he came prepared. This is a consent form for the Greystone Academy in Utah. They have a transport team ready. They can be here in the morning. Sign it, give me full custody decisions for the next 12 months, and I walk out of here and tell the lieutenant I tripped and fell. Bella goes away, gets fixed, and comes back a polite young lady. Don't sign it. And she goes to a cell, then court, then a juvenile detention center. And I will make sure the DA throws the book at her. I looked at the paper. It was a deal with the devil. And what about the inheritance? I asked quietly. Richard blinked. Excuse me? My mother left Bella a trust fund, I said, keeping my eyes locked on his. It unlocks when she's 18. But if she's declared mentally incompetent or has a felony record, the trustee control shifts to her guardian. That's you and Elena, isn't it? Richard's eyes narrowed just a fraction. It was a micro-expression, a tiny twitch of the eyelid. Caught it. This isn't about money, you pathetic little man, Richard sneered. I have more money in my couch cushions than you'll see in a lifetime. This is about safety. My safety. Right? I said. Your safety against a 100-pound girl. I turned to Lieutenant Graves. I want to see the evidence. You said you have probable cause. Aside from his word and his son's lie, what do you have? We have the physical injuries on the victim, Graves said, pointing to Richard. And we have the statement from Kyle Sterling, an eyewitness. What about security cameras? I asked. Richard's house is a fortress. I know he has cameras in the hallway, the living room, the exterior. Show me the footage. Richard sighed, an exaggerated, theatrical sound. I wish I could, Josh. I really do. It would clear this whole thing up in a second. But as I told the officers, we've been having network issues. The storm last week fried the main server. The system has been offline for 5 days. The technicians are scheduled to come out on Thursday. How convenient, I said dryly. It's unfortunate, Richard corrected. But look, we don't need video. We have witnesses. We have injuries. The case is shut. You're just stalling because you know you've failed as a father. That stung. He knew exactly where to aim. He knew my deepest insecurity, that I couldn't provide the lavish life Bella wanted, that I had failed to keep my family together. You have 10 minutes, Richard said, checking his Rolex. Decide, Utah or jail. Elena, come on. He walked out of the office, expecting Elena to follow like a well-trained pet. She hesitated, looking at me, then at the door. Elena, I said, my voice low, if you walk out that door with him, you're crossing a line you can never come back from. You're choosing him over your child. I'm trying to save her, she said, tears welling up. But they were tears of self-pity, not maternal grief. You don't understand, Josh. He'll destroy us. If I leave him, I have nothing. I signed a prenup. I can't go back to living in a chaotic apartment. I just can't. So you're selling Bella for a Rolls-Royce and a zip code, I said. She flinched as if I'd slapped her. Then she turned and walked out, closing the door behind her. I was alone with Lieutenant Graves. Look, Vance, Graves said, softening his tone. I don't like Sterling. Guy's a prick. But his lawyer is already on the phone with the chief. If you don't have anything concrete, I have to process the girl. My hands are tied. Give me 5 minutes with my daughter, I said. Then I'll give you your answer. Graves nodded. 5 minutes. I walked back to the holding cell. The hallway felt longer this time. I was vibrating with adrenaline. The pieces were all there. The motive, control, and likely the trust fund money. The method, provocation, and framing. The opportunity, the broken cameras. But Richard Sterling had made a classic villain mistake. He assumed he was the only one playing the game. He assumed that because I was a poor ex-cop, I was behind the times. He didn't know that my job for the last 3 years has been catching corporate spies and high-tech fraudsters. He didn't know about the gift I gave Bella for her 16th birthday. I entered the cell. Bella looked up, terrified. "Did they believe you?" "No," I said, sitting down opposite her. "They're giving us a choice. Utah or jail." Bella gasped. "No. Dad, please, I can't go away. I didn't do it." "I know," I said, reaching across the table to hold her hands. "And you're not going anywhere." "Bella, do you have the necklace I gave you?" Her hand went to her chest. She pulled out a silver pendant. It was shaped like a small heart with a tiny, intricate filigree design. It looked like a piece of jewelry you'd buy at a nice department store. "I'm wearing it," she said. "I never take it off, like you said." "Good." I smiled. And for the first time that night, it was a real smile. "And did you press the back of it when the fighting started? Like we practiced?" Bella nodded vigorously. "Yes. As soon as he came into my room and started yelling. I got scared. I pressed the little button twice. Just like you told me." "You're a brave girl," I said. "You did exactly the right thing." I pulled out my smartphone. "Richard thinks his cameras are broken. He thinks he controls the narrative because he controls the house." I opened a specialized app on my phone. It required a fingerprint and a facial scan to open. "What he doesn't know," I muttered, waiting for the app to load, "is that when I installed that security upgrade for Elena 6 months ago, the one Richard insisted on paying for to show off, I kept a backdoor admin access, just in case. And I looked at the necklace. He definitely doesn't know that your birthday present contains a high-definition wide-angle lens and a microphone." The app loaded. A list of files appeared. The most recent one was timestamped 11:15 p.m. "Let's go watch a movie," I said to Bella. I walked back into the bullpen, phone in hand. The atmosphere had shifted. Richard was growing impatient. He was standing by the sergeant's desk, talking loudly on his phone to his lawyer, a man named Blackwood who was known for burying victims under mountains of paperwork. "Yes, get the judge out of bed if you have to," Richard was saying. "I want the girl processed and the custody order signed tonight. Joshua is being obstinate." Elena was sitting on a bench nearby, looking like a statue of misery. Kyle was still playing on his phone, oblivious to the fact that his life was about to implode. I walked straight up to Lieutenant Graves, who was standing with Officer Miller. "I'm ready," I announced. Richard hung up his phone and turned to me, a smug smile plastered on his face. "Finally, coming to your senses, Josh? It's for the best. Greystone is a top-tier facility. They'll straighten her out." "I'm not signing the papers, Richard," I said calmly. Richard's smile faltered. "Then she goes to jail. I'm pressing charges right now. Officer, book her." "Actually," I raised my voice so the whole room could hear, "I'd like to file a countercomplaint. I'm filing charges against Richard Sterling for assault in the 2nd degree, child endangerment, and filing a false police report. And I'm filing charges against Kyle Sterling for perjury and obstruction of justice." The room went silent. Even the drunks in the holding tank seemed to quiet down. Richard laughed. It was a loud, incredulous bark. "You're delusional. You have no proof. My word against hers. And I have the injuries." "You have injuries you inflicted on yourself," I said. "That's insane," Richard spat. "Why would I scratch my own face? To frame a child. To get control of her trust fund. To remove an obstacle from your perfect life." I stepped closer. "You said your security cameras were broken, right? Fried by a storm." "That's right." Richard crossed his arms. "Unfortunate timing. Funny thing about that system," I said, tapping my phone screen. "I remember when you had it installed. You bragged about it being the best money could buy. Military grade. Redundant cloud backups. Independent power supplies for each camera." Richard shifted his weight. "So, the server crashed." "Maybe your local server did," I said. "But the cloud backup? That's hard to kill." And since the account was set up using Elena's email address, which I helped her recover last year, I held up my phone. I have access. Richard's face went from red to a pale, sickly gray. That's illegal. That's hacking. I'll sue you for invasion of privacy. It's not hacking if I have the password, I said. But here's the kicker, Richard. Even if you manage to delete the house footage, you missed the other camera. What other camera? Kyle asked, looking up, his arrogance suddenly replaced by confusion. The one Bella was wearing. I pointed to the necklace icon on my screen. A 4K wide-angle lens with audio. It uploads instantly to a secure server. I use them for undercover work. I gave one to Bella 3 months ago when she told me she didn't feel safe around you. I turned to Lieutenant Graves. Lieutenant, I have 2 videos here. One from the living room security camera that Richard thought was off, and one from Bella's perspective. Would you like to see them? Absolutely, Graves said, his eyes narrowing at Richard. Let's go to the AV room. Connect it to the big screen. No, Richard shouted. This is entrapment. This is inadmissible. I do not consent to being recorded in my own home. You're in a police station, Mr. Sterling, Graves said, his voice cold, and you just accused a minor of a violent felony. If there is evidence that exonerates her, we are going to watch it. Step into the conference room. Now. Richard looked at his lawyer on the phone, but he hadn't hung up. He put the phone to his ear. Blackwood? Did you hear that? Stop them. He listened for a second, then lowered the phone slowly. Even the shark lawyer knew that if there was video, the game was over. We marched into the conference room. It felt like a funeral procession, but the corpse was Richard's reputation. I plugged my phone into the HDMI cable. The large monitor on the wall flickered to life. Let's start with the house camera, I said. Living room view. 11:10 p.m. I pressed play. The video quality was crisp. 1080p. Night vision enhanced. On the screen, the living room of the Sterling mansion was perfectly framed. We saw Bella walking fast, trying to get to the stairs. She looked scared. Then Richard burst into the frame. He wasn't the calm, collected businessman sitting in the room with us. He was a monster. His face was twisted in rage. He grabbed Bella by the arm, spinning her around so hard her head snapped back. Don't you walk away from me when I'm talking to you, you ungrateful little brat, the Richard on the screen screamed. The audio was crystal clear. Let go of me, Bella yelled back, trying to pull her arm free. I pay for your food. I pay for the roof over your head, Richard shouted. He raised his hand and slapped her. Crack. The sound echoed in the conference room. Beside me, the real Bella flinched. Elena let out a gasp and covered her mouth. On screen, Bella stumbled back, clutching her face. I hate you, she screamed. Richard lunged at her. Bella put her hands up and pushed his chest. A defensive shove, exactly as she had described. Richard barely moved, but he used it as an excuse. He grabbed her by the hair. You touched me? He hissed. You want to fight? Bella broke free and scrambled up the stairs. Richard started to chase her, then stopped at the bottom of the landing. This was the moment. On screen, Richard looked around. He looked right at the camera lens in the corner of the ceiling. He smiled. It was a chilling, predatory smile. He thought the camera was dead. He looked at Kyle, who was standing in the doorway of the kitchen, holding a bag of chips. Kyle, Richard said calmly. Call 911. What? Kyle asked on the video. Call 911. Tell them Bella just attacked me. Tell them she's on drugs. Tell them she tried to gouge my eyes out. Serious? Kyle laughed. Okay. Then Richard did the unthinkable. We all watched in horrified silence as he raised his hands to his own face. He dug his manicured fingernails into his left cheek. He gritted his teeth and dragged them down, tearing the skin. Blood welled up instantly. He did it again, harder, making sure the wounds were deep and jagged. Ow, Richard said flatly to himself. Then he took a breath and started screaming at the top of his lungs. Help! Bella, stop! Oh my God! She's crazy. Help me. He ruffled his own hair, messed up his suit jacket, and smeared the blood on his white collar. How do I look? He asked Kyle. Like a victim. Kyle chuckled, dialing the phone. This is gonna be good. I paused the video. The silence in the conference room was absolute. It was heavy, suffocating. I turned to look at Richard. He was pale, trembling. He looked small. The arrogance had evaporated, leaving behind a pathetic, cornered rat. That's doctored, Richard whispered, but his voice had no power. Deepfake. AI. You made that. I have the raw file metadata, I said, and I have the second angle. I switched to the necklace camera footage. This one was shaky, chaotic. It showed the interaction from Bella's point of view. It showed Richard's looming face, the fear, the impact of the slap. It showed the terror of a child being hunted in her own home. I stopped the video and looked at Lieutenant Graves. Is that enough probable cause for you? Graves stood up. His face was hard. He looked at Richard with pure disgust. Richard Sterling, Graves said, his voice booming. Stand up. Put your hands behind your back. You can't do this, Richard stammered, backing away. Do you know who I am? I play golf with the mayor. I don't care if you play golf with the Pope, Graves said. Officer Miller. Cuff him. Miller moved fast. He spun Richard around and slapped the cuffs on. The metallic click was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. You're under arrest for assault, child abuse, filing a false police report, and attempted perversion of the course of justice, Graves recited. You have the right to remain silent, and I highly suggest you use it, because every word you've said tonight has dug your grave deeper. Kyle Sterling, Graves pointed to the boy. Cuff him too. What? Kyle shrieked, jumping up. I didn't do anything. I'm a minor. You can't arrest me. You're 17, I said. In this state, you can be charged as an adult for serious felonies. You lied to the police to help frame an innocent girl. That's conspiracy. Kyle started crying immediately. The tough guy act vanished. Dad made me do it. I didn't want to. He said he'd cut off my allowance if I didn't help. Shut up, Kyle. Richard yelled as Miller dragged him toward the door. This is a mistake, Richard shouted as he was hauled out into the hallway, paraded past the open door where everyone could see. I'll sue this entire department. Joshua, you're dead. I'll bury you. You're already buried, Richard, I said quietly. You just didn't know it. This was the moment, the turning point. The weight that had been crushing my chest for hours finally lifted. This is the moment that changed everything, when I finally took back control of my life and protected my daughter. Thank you for being patient and sticking with me this far. You guys are amazing. Please hit that like button and comment the number 1 below so I know you've been with me on this ride. It not only helps more people find this story, but it tells me that my experience means something to you. Your support is the biggest motivation for me to share the rest of this journey. The room cleared out quickly. Richard and Kyle were taken to booking. The noise of Richard's threats faded down the hallway. I was left in the conference room with Bella and Elena. Bella was sitting in a chair, watching the screen where the video had paused on Richard's bloody, self-inflicted face. She looked numb. Elena was standing in the corner. She looked like she had aged 10 years in 10 minutes. She was trembling, tears streaming down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. She took a step toward Bella. Baby. I stepped between them. I didn't do it aggressively, but I did it firmly. I was a wall she wasn't going to cross. Don't, I said. Josh, I didn't know, Elena sobbed. I swear. He told me. He said she was crazy. I finished for her. And you believed him. You believed the man with the Rolls-Royce over the daughter you raised. I was scared, Elena pleaded. He's intense. You know how he is. I thought if I just went along with it, he would calm down. I thought the school in Utah would be good for her. You thought a prison camp would be good for her? I asked, my voice rising. You were going to ship her away so you wouldn't have to deal with the inconvenience of her existence. You were going to let her take the fall for his violence because you didn't want to lose your heated swimming pool. That's not fair, Elena cried. I love her. Love is protection, Elena, I said. I drove 90 miles an hour to get here. I risked my career to hack a server. I stood up to a precinct full of cops. That's love. Standing there and watching your husband frame your daughter because you signed a prenup? That's not love. That's a transaction. Elena collapsed into a chair, burying her face in her hands. What am I going to do? He's going to jail. They'll seize the assets, the house, the accounts. Everything is in his name. I don't care about your money, Mom, Bella said. Her voice was small but steady. She stood up and walked over to stand beside me. She didn't look at her mother. She looked at the door. I just want to go home. With Dad. Elena looked up, her eyes wide with panic. Bella, no. You can't leave me. We need to stick together. We need to figure this out. I am figuring it out, I said. I'm taking emergency custody. Tonight. Lieutenant Graves has already signed off on the temporary order given the circumstances. Bella is coming with me. You can't take her, Elena shrieked. I have primary custody. Not anymore, I said. You're an accessory, Elena. You witnessed the aftermath and lied to the police to corroborate Richard's story. Graves is being generous by not arresting you right now for child endangerment. If you fight me on this, I will make sure he changes his mind. Elena froze. The reality of her situation hit her. She wasn't just losing her husband and her money. She was close to losing her freedom. Go home, Elena, I said, my voice tired. Go back to that big, empty house. Pack your bags. Because once the lawyers get involved, and the truth about Richard's finances comes out, and believe me, it will, you're going to find out just how little that lifestyle was actually worth. I put my arm around Bella. Come on, kiddo. Let's get out of here. We walked out of the precinct into the cool night air. The rain had started to fall, a light drizzle that felt like it was washing away the grime of the last few hours. My Porsche was waiting under the street lamp. It looked good. Solid. Dad? Bella asked as she buckled her seatbelt. Yeah, honey? Did you really hack his server? I started the engine. Let's just say I made sure the truth had a backup plan. Is he going to prison? For a long time, I promised. Assaulting a minor, filing false reports. And I have a feeling this isn't the only skeleton in his closet. Once I start digging into his past, I'm going to find more. Men like Richard never commit just one crime. I pulled out of the lot. As we drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror. I saw the lights of the precinct fading. Inside, Richard Sterling was trading his Italian suit for an orange jumpsuit. Kyle was learning that Daddy's money couldn't bribe a booking officer. And Elena was realizing she was alone. I looked over at Bella. She was leaning her head against the window, her hand clutching the necklace I gave her. She looked exhausted, bruised, but safe. I'm sorry I didn't believe you sooner, I said quietly. I should have gotten you out of there months ago. You came when I called, she said. That's what matters. We drove in silence for a while. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by a deep fatigue. But my mind was still working. I knew Richard wouldn't go down without a fight. He had resources I couldn't imagine. He had connections. This battle was won, but the war was just beginning. And there was something else. Something about the way Richard had panicked when I mentioned the Indiana case, the sealed file I had bluffed about earlier. I hadn't actually seen it yet, but his reaction told me everything I needed to know. There was a body buried somewhere in his past. Maybe literally. I was going to find it. Dad, Bella murmured, half asleep. Yeah. Can we get pancakes? I smiled. Yeah, kid. We can get pancakes. As we drove toward the all-night diner, I didn't know that by morning, the video would be viral. I didn't know that my phone would be ringing off the hook with threats from Richard's associates. And I definitely didn't know that the investigation I was about to start would uncover a conspiracy that went way beyond a domestic dispute. But for now, I had my daughter. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The 3 months leading up to the trial felt less like waiting and more like preparing for a siege. Richard Sterling didn't go down quietly. Even from inside his holding cell at King County Jail, he was trying to pull strings. He hired a new defense team, a group of sharks who cost more per hour than I used to make in a month on the force. They filed motions to suppress the video evidence, claiming I had obtained it illegally. They tried to paint me as a disgruntled ex-husband and Bella as a mentally unstable teenager prone to hallucinations. But they didn't know I hadn't been sleeping. While Richard sat in a cell, I was digging. I knew men like him. Narcissists don't just wake up one day and decide to frame a child. It's a pattern. It's a lifestyle. And usually, there's a trail of bodies, metaphorically or literally, left in their wake. I remembered the fear in his eyes when I mentioned Indiana. That was my thread. Pulled it. I spent weeks combing through archives in Marion County. I tracked down old police reports, insurance claims, and obituary notices. I wasn't just a father anymore. I was a hunter, and what I found made the assault on Bella look like a warm-up act. The trial began on a rainy Tuesday in Seattle. The courtroom was packed. The video of Richard scratching his own face had leaked. Not by me, but leaks happen, and the public outrage was massive. People love to see a rich bully fall. I sat in the front row, Bella next to me. She was wearing a simple blue dress, holding my hand so tight her knuckles were white. She had been in therapy for the last 12 weeks, dealing with the nightmares and the trauma bond she had with her mother. She was getting stronger, but seeing Richard again, even in an orange jumpsuit, made her tremble. Richard walked in. He looked thinner. The arrogance was still there, but it was brittle now. He glared at me, a look of pure, unadulterated hatred. His lawyer, a slick man named Harrison Blackwood, started his opening statement by trying to dismiss the video as contextually misleading. He argued that Richard was a pillar of the community, a job creator, a man of faith. Then it was the prosecution's turn. My friend Sarah Jenkins, the chief deputy DA, stood up. She was calm, methodical, and dangerous. "Ladies and gentlemen," Sarah said, walking toward the jury, "we are going to show you that Mr. Sterling is not a victim. He is a predator who uses our legal system as a weapon." The first 2 days were a blur of testimony. Lieutenant Graves took the stand. Officer Miller testified about the change in demeanor. Then the video played. Even though most people had seen it online, watching it in the silence of a courtroom was different. When Richard clawed his own face on that screen, a collective gasp went through the jury box. But the real blow wasn't the video. It was what came next. On the third day, Sarah called a surprise witness. "The prosecution calls Detective Joshua Vance to the stand," she announced. I walked up, took the oath, and sat down. I looked at Richard. He was whispering frantically to Blackwood. "Mr. Vance," Sarah asked, "in the course of your investigation into your daughter's assault, did you uncover evidence of a pattern of behavior regarding the defendant?" "Objection," Blackwood shouted, jumping up. "Relevance. Prior bad acts are inadmissible." "It goes to motive and method, Your Honor," Sarah countered coolly. "And it speaks to the defendant's history of witness tampering and staging crime scenes." The judge, a no-nonsense woman named Patricia Williams, peered over her glasses. "I'll allow it, but tread carefully, counselor." Sarah turned back to me. "Detective, what did you find in Indiana?" I took a breath. This was it. The nail in the coffin. 6 years ago, I began, my voice steady. Richard Sterling lived in Indianapolis under the name Richard St. James. He was married to a woman named Veronica Miller. She was wealthy. She had a substantial inheritance. Richard's face went paper white. He stopped whispering. He stopped moving. "Veronica died in a car accident," I continued. "Her brakes failed on a winding road. The police ruled it a tragic mechanical failure. Richard collected a $3 million life insurance payout and liquidated her assets before moving to Seattle and changing his last name to Sterling." "Objection," Blackwood screamed. "This is hearsay. This is slander." "I have the sworn affidavit," I said, pulling a document from my jacket pocket. From the mechanic who serviced that car 2 days before the accident. A man named Gary Polson. I tracked him down in Florida last week. The courtroom erupted. The gavel banged like a gunshot. Mr. Polson admits, I said, raising my voice over the noise, that Richard paid him $10,000 to overlook a frayed brake line. He didn't cut it. He just didn't fix it when he knew it was about to snap. He let her drive a death trap. Richard slammed his hands on the table. You liar. You filthy liar. Sit down, Mr. Sterling. Judge Williams roared. I also have the transfer records, I said, looking straight at Richard. The money trail from your account to Polson's sister's account. It's all there, Richard. The Homicide Division in Indianapolis reopened the case this morning. There is a warrant being issued for your arrest for first-degree murder as we speak. That was the breaker. The heir left the room. Richard Blackwood, the high-priced lawyer, actually took a step away from his own client. Richard looked around the room wild-eyed. He looked at the jury who were looking back at him with horror. He looked at Elena, who was sitting in the back row, sobbing into a handkerchief. Then he looked at Bella. And for the first time, Bella didn't look away. She stared right back at him. She wasn't the victim anymore. She was the witness to his destruction. The rest of the trial was a formality. The defense collapsed. The Indiana revelation destroyed Richard's credibility so completely that even his paid experts looked embarrassed to be there. The jury deliberated for less than an hour. Guilty on all counts. Assault in the second degree. Child endangerment. Filing a false police report. Attempted perversion of justice. But the real victory came during sentencing. Because of the flight risk presented by the pending murder charges in Indiana, Judge Williams denied bail pending appeal. Mr. Sterling, the judge said, looking down at him with disdain, you used your wealth and your position to terrorize a child. You tried to manipulate this court. You are a danger to society. I am sentencing you to the maximum penalty allowed by law, 10 years in state prison. And, she added, you will be held without bond until you're transferred to Indiana authorities to face trial for the murder of Veronica Miller. Richard didn't scream this time. He just slumped. The handcuffs clicked. 2 bailiffs hauled him up. As they walked him out, he looked old. He looked weak. The monster had been defanged. I walked out of the courtroom with Bella by my side. The hallway was filled with reporters. Cameras flashed. Microphones were shoved in our faces. Detective Vance, how do you feel? Bella, do you have a statement? I shielded her, guiding her through the crowd. No comment. Let us pass. We made it to the lobby, where the air was cooler. Standing there, near the exit, was a figure I had expected but dreaded seeing. Elena. She looked like a ghost of the woman she used to be. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by a nondescript coat. Her hair was pulled back messily. She looked tired, defeated, and small. She stepped forward as we approached. Josh. Bella. Bella stopped. She tightened her grip on my arm. Bella, Elena said, her voice trembling. I'm so glad he's gone. I watched the news. I had no idea about the first wife. My God, that could have been me. It probably would have been, I said coldly. Once the money ran out or you became inconvenient. I know, Elena sniffed. She looked at Bella, reaching out a hand but not daring to touch her. Baby, I made a mistake. A horrible mistake. I was blinded by him, but I'm your mother. I want to fix this. We can start over. I filed for divorce. I'm going to get the house back, and... Stop. I cut her off. The house is gone, Elena, I said. The feds froze his assets this morning. The house, the cars, the accounts, it's all proceeds of crime or tied up in the murder investigation. You signed a prenup that gave you nothing if the marriage ended. And since he's being convicted of felonies, the lifestyle clause is void. Elena's eyes widened. But I need... Where am I supposed to go? I don't know, I said. You have a degree. You can get a job. You can rent an apartment. You can live like the rest of us. But Bella, Elena pleaded, shifting her gaze to our daughter. I need you. We're family. You can't let your father keep you from me. I have rights. You lost your rights the night you watched him beat me and told me to apologize, Bella said. Her voice was shaking, but her words were clear. Bella, please. I was scared. So was I, Bella shouted, and the sound echoed in the marble lobby. I was 16, Mom. You were the adult. You were supposed to protect me, but you chose the car. You chose the trips. You chose him. Elena sobbed. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I forgive you, Bella said quietly. Elena looked up, hopeful. You do? Yes, Bella said. I forgive you because I don't want to carry the hate around anymore. Richard has enough of my energy. I'm not giving you any more of it. But I'm not coming back. I don't trust you. And I don't want to see you. Bella. Goodbye, Mom. Bella turned and walked toward the doors. She didn't look back. I looked at Elena one last time. You have my number. Use it only for emergencies. And Elena, if you try to fight the permanent custody order, I will bring up your complicity in the assault charges. Sarah Jenkins is very interested in why you lied to the police that night. Don't test me. I turned and followed my daughter out into the sunlight. The rain had stopped. The Seattle sky was a brilliant, piercing blue. We walked to the Porsche. I opened the door for her. You okay? I asked. Bella took a deep breath, inhaling the fresh air. I feel light. Is that weird? No, I said. That's freedom. What happens to him now? She asked. Richard. He goes to prison, I said. He loses his name. He loses his money. He becomes a number. And then, he goes to Indiana to answer for a woman who didn't have someone like me to fight for her. And Kyle? Juvenile detention, I said. 2 years. Maybe it'll save him. Maybe he'll learn that lying has consequences. Maybe not. But he's not our problem anymore. We got in the car. I started the engine, the purr of the motor feeling like a heartbeat. Dad. Yeah. Can we go look at colleges? She asked. I know I'm only a junior, but I want to think about the future. My grades are coming back up. We can go wherever you want, I said. Your college fund is safe. I moved it to a new trust this morning. No one can touch it but you. I don't care about the money, she said, looking out the window as the city rolled by. I just want to be somewhere where I matter. You matter here, I said, reaching over to squeeze her hand. You matter everywhere you go. We drove onto the highway, leaving the courthouse, the jail, and the ruin of the Sterling Empire in the rearview mirror. We were moving forward, and for the first time in a long time, the road ahead looked clear. The ocean breeze at Cannon Beach has a way of stripping the noise out of your head. We rented a cabin for the weekend, just me and Bella, to celebrate her report card. Straight A's, chemistry included. I sat on the deck with a cup of coffee, watching Bella walk along the shoreline. She was laughing at a dog that was chasing seagulls. She looked like a child again, carefree and light, the shadows of the precinct and the courtroom finally fading from her posture. It's strange how life works. 6 months ago, I was a man defined by his past. An ex-cop, an ex-husband, a guy trying to prove he wasn't a failure. Now I was just that. And that title felt heavier and more valuable than detective or officer ever did. The legal fallout was still settling, but the dust was clearing. Richard was in Indiana, awaiting trial. The DA there told me the evidence was overwhelming. He wasn't getting out, ever. His assets had been liquidated to pay restitution to his investors and victims. The Rolls-Royce, the mansion, the expensive suits, all sold off at auction. It turned out Richard Sterling was leveraged to the hilt. The wealth was a house of cards built on fraud and dead wives. Elena had moved into a small condo in Renton. She was working as a receptionist at a dental office. We didn't talk much. She sent Bella letters. Bella read them, sometimes replied with a short note, but she held her boundaries. It was a hard lesson for a mother to learn. That trust, once broken, is harder to fix than a shattered bone. I took a sip of coffee and thought about the college fund. It wasn't just money in a bank account anymore. It was a promise. It was freedom. Bella wanted to study psychology. She said she wanted to help kids who felt unheard. She wanted to be a child advocate. Dad! Bella shouted from the beach, waving a piece of driftwood like a sword. Come down here. The tide is coming in. I put my mug down and walked down the wooden steps to the sand. The sand was cold between my toes. Look at this, she said, holding up a perfectly smooth gray stone. It survived the ocean. It got shaped by it, I corrected, taking the stone. Whatever rough edges it had, the waves knocked them off. Now it's strong. She looked at me, her eyes wise beyond her 16 years. Like us. Yeah, I smiled. Like us. We walked along the water's edge. I saw Kyle's Instagram, she said suddenly. Before he deleted it, he posted from the detention center. He looked scared. He should be, I said. He's learning the hard way that his father's name doesn't mean anything in the real world. Do you think he'll ever change? I don't know, Bella. Some people are so broken they just break everyone around them. Some people heal. It's a choice. You chose to heal. You chose to tell the truth. That makes you different. She stopped and looked out at the horizon. I was so afraid that night, Dad. When I called you, I thought you wouldn't come. Or that you couldn't do anything against Richard. I will always come, I said fiercely. I don't care if I'm in a meeting in another country or in a grave. If you call, I will find a way. She leaned her head on my shoulder. I know. My lawyer, Dad. I laughed. Investigator, Dad. Lawyers charge more. Speaking of lawyers, she grinned. Sarah came over for dinner again last week. Is something going on there? I felt my face heat up. Sarah Jenkins had been a rock through all of this. And yeah, maybe there was something there. A shared respect. A shared history. We're just friends, Bella. She helped us. She looks at you like you're Superman, Bella teased. And honestly, you kind of are. I'm just a guy with a Porsche and a stubborn streak. I deflected, bumping her shoulder. No, she said, her voice turning serious. You listened. That's what made you a hero. Everyone else, Mom, the police, the neighbors, they all saw what they wanted to see. They saw the rich man and the troubled teen. You saw me. You listened to me. That hit me hard. It was the core of everything. We live in a world that loves a good story, I said. Richard told a good story. He had the props, the car, the suit, the wounds. But the truth is usually quiet. It doesn't scream. It waits for someone to pay attention. I'm glad you paid attention, she whispered. Me too. We walked back toward the cabin as the sun began to dip below the water, painting the sky in purples and oranges. I thought about the salary I used to chase, the promotions I thought I needed to be good enough for Elena. None of that mattered. The only promotion that mattered was the one Bella gave me. From weekend dad to dad. The nightmare was over. The funeral for our old life was done. We had buried the fear, the walking on eggshells, the constant need to please a tyrant. In its place, we were building something real. I looked at my daughter. She was strong. She was scarred, yes, but those scars were proof she had survived a battle. She wasn't the victim of Richard Sterling anymore. She was Bella Vance, future psychologist, survivor, my kid. And as for me, I was finally the man I wanted to be. Not because of the car I drove or the cases I solved, but because when the call came in the middle of the night, I answered. As I sit here telling you this story, looking at that picture of Bella graduating high school on my desk, I want to leave you with something important. We live in a culture that worships image. We look at the shiny cars, the big titles, the perfect families on social media, and we assume that success equals goodness. Richard Sterling had it all on the outside. But inside, he was a hollow, dangerous man. The biggest lesson I learned, and that I hope you take away, is that abuse doesn't always look like a monster in a dark alley. Sometimes, it looks like a charming banker in a tailored suit. It looks like a parent who chooses their lifestyle over their child's safety. It looks like compliance masked as peace. If you are a parent, your first, second, and third job is to protect your children. Not your reputation. Not your bank account. Your children. Listen to them. When they tell you something is wrong, believe them first and ask questions later. Don't be an Elena. Don't let your fear of being alone or poor stop you from doing what is right. And if you are someone like Bella, who feels trapped, who feels like no one believes you, keep fighting. Keep documenting. Find your Joshua. Whether it's a teacher, a friend, or a hotline, there is a way out. Interactive CTA, I want to hear from you now. What was the moment in the story that hit you the hardest? Was it the video reveal? The discovery of the Indiana files? Or Bella's forgiveness of her mother? Type good in the comments if you believe that justice was served, or share your own thought on what parents should do when their children cry for help. Let's get a conversation going. Your experience might just be the lifeline someone else needs to read today. Thank you for listening to my story. Stay safe, stay vigilant, and always answer the call.